So Dustin Poirier recently came out and said that he will be no longer taking on Tony Ferguson on the main card of UFC 254 Khabib versus Gaethje. The fight was never officially announced, however it was in the works and it seemed as though that fight was going to be officially announced soon. However, Dustin Poirier could not come to financial agreements with the UFC. He feels as though he should have been compensated more. That seems to be the case with a lot of fighters nowadays, but Dana White responded to this immediately at last night's post-fight press conference for UFC Vegas 10, saying that Dustin Poirier is not in his interest right now, and he's not even going to try and work things out between Dustin Poirier and Tony Ferguson. He's going to find a replacement fighter for Tony Ferguson, or try to at least, at UFC 254. First of all, what does this tell us about the whole situation? It tells us this: they want Tony Ferguson at UFC 254, and they don't care if it isn't against Dustin Poirier. They want Tony Ferguson at UFC 254, and I tell you why they want Tony Ferguson at UFC 254, because you know why? Khabib versus Gaethje is taking place in the main event. Tony Ferguson is one of the few guys who right now is coming off a loss that a lot of people would not mind getting a title shot despite losing his last fight, because he's already earned it enough. Okay, so if Tony Ferguson's on the UFC 254 card, he can fill in as a short notice replacement for the main event dropout, wherever it happens. Khabib could fall out of the fight, Justin Gaethje could fall out of the fight as well, and Tony Ferguson can step right in for the main event and get his title shot that he's wanted for so long. Or if it's Khabib that pulls out, he can get a rematch against Justin Gaethje for an interim belt or something along those lines. They want Tony Ferguson at UFC 254, but you know what this does? And the reason why Tony Ferguson should stay on at UFC 254? Because Poirier isn't the guy that's fighting him. If Poirier was also on the card, okay, and Khabib fell out of the main event between him and Justin Gaethje, they would not put Tony Ferguson against Gaethje over Poirier versus Gaethje, because Poirier already beat Gaethje and Tony Ferguson lost to Gaethje in his last fight, so they would bump Poirier up instead of Tony Ferguson. Dustin Poirier, in my opinion, before we even go any further with this, I want to say this right now, may have just ended his career, because maybe that's a little bit of an overstatement, ending his career, but one thing I will say, he has just made his career 10 times more difficult for wanting a little bit of extra cash, because if he would have taken this fight against Tony Ferguson, he would have had an opportunity to fill in for a main event slot, depending on who fell out of the fight. He would have had an opportunity to make a bunch of money against Tony Ferguson, even though it wouldn't be the amount of money that he wanted to fight Tony Ferguson for. He still would have made a bunch of money. I mean, he made 300 grand against Dan Hooker, which is quite a bit of money for a guy without a belt in the UFC. I'm sure you guys will agree with me, but you know what? Poirier wanted more money. I just think it was a little bit greedy of him. He should have taken the Tony Ferguson fight, because one thing that I will say again, he had the golden opportunity. And this is the one thing, if you're going to be taking on Tony Ferguson, what's the one thing you would request from the gods? Please, 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 let it be 3 rounds instead of 5. Dustin Poirier had an opportunity to earn himself a title shot against Tony Ferguson, 1, coming off a very damaging loss not too long ago, and 2, for 3 rounds. And Dustin Poirier passed up on that opportunity, which is and I'm going to put this speculation out there, because I don't think Dustin Poirier is this dumb. What I think may have happened is that Dustin Poirier is injured and he doesn't want to reveal that he's injured, because maybe it's a knee injury, and you know, guys go for the injuries that they know fighters have. We've seen that time and time again in fights. As soon as someone says they have an injury, all of a sudden everyone's targeting that same spot. So I think, unless Dustin Poirier is mentally deranged and stupid, which I don't think he is, but you never know, those knees from Dan Hooker in the second round may have been the thing that the straw that broke the camel's back in terms of the brain capacity levels of Dustin Poirier. But still, I don't think Poirier's a dumb person. I really don't. And I think the potential is that he is injured right now. There is a potential chance that he's injured, he doesn't want anyone to know, and he's found his own way out of the fight without letting anyone know about his injury. That's a very plausible option that could have actually happened. But if not, Tony Ferguson is going to need a new opponent at UFC 254, which means that Dana White wants him at UFC 254, and why wouldn't you? Any card with Khabib and Ferguson on, regardless if they're facing each other or not, is going to be an amazing card, and UFC 254 is already looking like it's going to be one of the best cards of all time, by the looks of things. Honestly, it's an amazing card so far, and we've still got fights to be made on the card. Like, the card is already a good pay-per-view card with the fights that have already been announced on it. But add some more in there and sprinkle a Zabit versus Yair and a Tony Ferguson versus someone else. You're talking about one of the biggest cards of all time. You're talking about UFC 249 levels of card display. It's an amazing card. And I think Tony Ferguson needs an opponent for that event. And one person that really sticks out right now is Conor McGregor. If you don't know, Conor McGregor, before his recent problems at a charity event, apparently he got charged with indecent exposure or something like that, which is just an accusation made. I'm on the side of innocent until proven guilty. I'm sure a lot of people are on that side now. Well, actually, I don't know. It's 2020. People seem to be on the other side. Accusation is justice, of course. And that's the, the accuser is the judge, of course. That's how it works. One person accused Conor McGregor of doing something at a charity event, which means that it happened, according to the media, which makes no sense whatsoever. I'm willing to wait and see if there's any proof or evidence of this happening before I jump to a conclusion. But still, the day before these accusations came out, Conor McGregor had a visit from USADA at his yacht. USADA is going to visit Conor McGregor. Now, Conor McGregor, that means, has not left the USADA testing pool. Why would you be in the USADA testing pool if you're retired, Conor McGregor? I said this from the very beginning. Conor McGregor was never retired. He was just sitting out on his own terms. That's a very important technique that Conor McGregor has used many times in his career. Dana White said, you're not fighting again in 2020. If Conor McGregor says, no, I am, he looks like the bitch, and Dana White has control over him. But if Conor McGregor says, you know what, I'm retired, it looks like Conor McGregor's chosen to sit out throughout 2020, rather than just listening to Dana White's orders and what the UFC has told him to do, reclaiming his image of having power over the UFC because he can just retire whenever he wants. But he's still in the USADA testing pool. They tested him recently as well, which just so happened to be the same day that Poirier announced that he was out of the fight against Tony Ferguson, or at least within a day or two period of that news coming out, which is very strange timing, and it makes me feel as though maybe Conor McGregor's going to be filling in for Tony Ferguson. But one thing that makes me think that McGregor isn't, which is why I'm crossing McGregor off the list of potential short replacement opponents for Tony Ferguson at UFC 245, or 254, sorry. It's not even short notice, to be honest with you. He'll still have pretty much a full camp by the time the card comes around. Well, not really, but still. It's not too short of notice, so it's not that much of a short notice replacement, but still, I've crossed McGregor off the list purely because McGregor ain't going to be co-main event for Khabib versus Gaethje. That just ain't happening. So I'm not going to act as though Conor McGregor is going to step in and take on Tony Ferguson on short notice. You know who will do it, though? Closed mouths don't give fid in this game, eh? Dan Hooker. I love it. Dan Hooker's going to step in on short notice. I know he is. He said, you know where I am, give me a call, I'm ready, give me a call, or something like that on Instagram. I know that Dan Hooker's going to get the call to fight Tony Ferguson. I'll tell you this, I called this ages ago. Tony Ferguson's going to fight Dan Hooker, because you know what? It makes a lot of sense. I think Poirier versus McGregor 2 right now makes a lot of sense. Both guys are coming off wins. There's history between them. They both haven't got opponents right now either, so that's a perfect fight to make. Another fight that's quite perfect to make. Tony Ferguson coming off a loss. Dan Hooker coming off a loss. Both guys in the top 5 of the lightweight division. Both need to snap their losing situation and end up with a win. Dan Hooker versus Tony Ferguson makes all the sense in the world, and I think that's exactly what they're going to do, because you know why? Dustin Poirier's asking for too much money. Why not pay Dan Hooker half to do the same job? Tony Ferguson's the big name anyway, and this is where I think that Dustin Poirier messed himself up. I think Poirier thought he was in a situation where the UFC were going to just disband whatever they wanted to do because Poirier's no longer on the card. Dustin Poirier, you are a big name in MMA, but you're only as big as the names around you, okay? And and how big of a name you are considered is only based on who's around you in your division. Like, you could be a big name, Dustin Poirier, if you were in the top 15 of the middleweight division, barely outside the top 10. You'd be one of the hugest names, and the UFC would do anything for you. You're surrounded by Dan Hooker, who will fight anyone, anywhere, anytime. Tony Ferguson, you're surrounded by. You know? Conor McGregor, you're surrounded by right now. You're not the top dog to make the calls and stop events from happening and stop fights from happening because you're not involved in them. And I think that's why it is an injury from Dustin Poirier, because I don't think he would be this dumb. Why would he choose to make his career 5 times harder unless there was some kind of situation behind the scenes that meant that this would make sense for him. And I feel as though this is exactly what's going to happen. The UFC has realized that Dustin Poirier versus Tony Ferguson, it messes things up. Because the winner of that one is going to want a title shot. And Conor McGregor's going to want a fight that gets him to a title shot. And all of a sudden you're going to have a log jam at the top of the division. McGregor's the money man. And you've got a well-deserving contender in the winner of Ferguson versus Poirier. I feel as though Poirier has hedged his bets. Got himself out of the fight with Tony Ferguson. He's going to be now looking for a fight with Conor McGregor. And Ferguson's going to take on Dan Hooker in the co-main event of UFC 254. And before you tell me that Dan Hooker is not a co-main event of a pay-per-view worthy fighter, he was the co-main event of Adesanya versus Silva, I believe. Or Adesanya versus Whitaker, against Al Iaquinta. I can't wait for Dan Hooker versus Tony Ferguson. And I'll tell you this. I thought Poirier was going to beat Ferguson purely because it's a 3-round fight. That's a huge deal to me. I think Dan Hooker would beat Tony Ferguson in a 3-rounder as well. One thing I worry about with Dan Hooker, though, is that he shoots takedowns with his head right into a guillotine position or right into a dash choke position. Snapdown City does exist. That is a real city on earth. And Tony Ferguson is the mayor of that city. He's the mayor of Snapdown City. It's a dangerous place. It really is. That's the only problem I have with Dan Hooker taking on Tony Ferguson. But other than that, I think that Dan Hooker right here, just by being the guy that says yes when Poirier was saying no, is going to get himself a great position in the division. And also, Poirier, this kind of works out for him. Because if Dan Hooker goes out there and beats Tony Ferguson, well done, Dan Hooker, I just beat you. You ain't jumping over me. Now Dustin Poirier's the top dog, and he gets to fight with Conor McGregor. It's a great situation in the lightweight division right now, but one thing I do like is that we know that Ferguson's on UFC 254. That's what I do like. And we also know that Dan Hooker says yes. Regardless of the pay, regardless of the money, Dan Hooker says yes. And if they ring him, he'll say yes. And it's going to be an amazing card. I wish Poirier versus Ferguson was happening, but I feel as though this might be for the best. In all honesty, this might fix things in the lightweight division. Hooker versus Ferguson's a good matchup. Then we can do Poirier versus McGregor. Rebook Oliveira versus Dariush. But Oliveira says he's going to be out for the rest of the year. So maybe don't do that one. Wait for Oliveira to take on one of the losers of these upcoming bouts maybe. Then Oliveira can get what he wants in a top 5 opponent as well. It seems as though things have accidentally worked themselves out in the lightweight division. And I'm looking forward to it, man. I really am looking forward to it. And I can't wait. Because this way, Tony Ferguson, who was in a position where if Khabib fell out of the main event, Poirier would get the title shot. Now that he's not facing Poirier, he's facing Dan Hooker. If anyone falls out of the main event, Ferguson's getting the call over Dan Hooker. Good situation to be in for Ferg. See you later, boys. Thank you for watching. I hope I broke down the situation as best I can. That's my thoughts on it. I feel like I rambled a little bit, but we got there in the end. You know, you just got, with the MMA Guru channel, you've just got to find a... You just got to navigate your way through the autism, you know? And we'll get to some actual points. Usually it's just rambling and nonsense and repeating things that you've said 5 times already in the fucking video. But you just got to navigate your way through the autism, and eventually there's a credible point to be made. And that's what you're here for, you know? It's an investment, the MMA Guru. It really is, because you get to the end and you might hear a valid point. Like and subscribe. Thank you very much. Click that button there, which I've repeated twice now. Goodbye.